and experiences from the waste energy industry in China.
Sure. So my name is Nicolas Martens and I'm representing Keppel Seegers. So today I will speak about the waste energy sector in India, which entered India about 10 years ago and is struggling to be successful. So I will pinpoint some of the hurdles that we face. But first, a quick word about Keppel Seegers. So Keppel is a Singaporean multinational listed in Singapore. Keppel Seegers also has its headquarters in Singapore, but the technological headquarters is in Belgium. That's why I don't look like a Singaporean, but why I'm a Belgian. Some of our references. So we built about 70 waste energy lines in China. We built the largest waste energy plant in Qatar, treating 2,300 tonnes a day. The largest one in the UK, treating 2,600 tonnes of RDF a day. We built one of the first RDF plant in India, which is in Ghazipur, treating 550 tonnes of RDF a day. We built the largest plant in the world, consisting out of 12 lines, and the last phase, 12 lines in 3 phases. The last phase is 5 lines each, treating 1,000 tonnes a day, totaling 9,000 tonnes a day treatment capacity. Then we are, as we speak, building in Hong Kong, probably the most iconic waste to energy project in the world on an artificial island, 6 lines of 600, treating 3,000 tonnes per day all year round. We are also building the first waste to energy in the southern hemisphere, in Australia, in Perth is that, also as we speak. And now we just started to design the technologically most advanced waste to energy in the world, which is in Singapore, the 7th incineration plant over there. And last but not least, we are also building a plant in Ahmedabad, which is a one-time 850 tonne per day treatment capacity, which is now under erection. So based, as you could see, Keppel is a leading waste to energy player, and based on that experience, we can pinpoint some of the gaps to be avoided in the Indian waste to energy industry. Because in India, we have to be sure that we become more successful as an industry before it becomes even more complicated to generate successful waste to energy projects. So, as for any project, for any process, what happens upstream is extremely important. So the reliable waste collection needs to be there. It means avoid sweeping sand because sand cannot be incinerated, and avoid rain because rain is obviously not a contributor to energy generation. So although I hear all kinds of stories around, you should aim at having at least 6 megajoule per kilogram before thinking of building a waste incineration. 6 megajoule is on the average. You can go temporarily a little bit lower than that, but you should make sure that on average you're around 6 megajoule to have a stable combustion with good emissions. But a commercial framework is very important. So it should be long-term commitments in terms of feeding-in tariff. Indexed feeding-in tariff. India is the only country in the world where I seen that feeding-in tariffs are not indexed, and there should also be a gate fee mechanism. So India is also one of the few countries that tries to avoid gate fees, but that's not really fair, and I don't think it's contributing to the success of waste energy projects. Then the regulatory framework needs to be right. So I just give one example. In the SWM 2016 rules, there is a rule that stipulates that the residence time for incineration needs to be over 2 seconds, 950 degrees. India is the only country in the world that requires this. Everywhere else, it's only 850 degrees, and this is a very counterproductive and meaningless measure. So it would be good that these annoying rules are adjusted. And then the contractual framework. What we see is that there is a lot of impatience everywhere, but particularly in India, I would say. But that is extremely counterproductive. Building a waste to energy, developing and building a waste to energy takes time, and that time has to be allowed for. You can manage the timetable very adequately and very sharp by dedicating or pinpointing intermediate milestones, but never try to build a project in 12 months, because in the end it's going to cost much more, and the quality will be less, and the time to build it will surpass the 12 months and even the 48 months, which is usually required for very large projects. What we also see is that there are overburdening liabilities in the contract to make sure that the project is successful, but this is counterproductive because they scare off the reliable and experienced companies. What we also see is that a lot of time is lost because the BOT contracts which are issued are not bankable. So it means the liabilities in there are too high for the bank to accept in terms of granting a loan, and therefore a lot of time is lost before these contracts are adjusted and acceptable for the bank. What can we learn from China in particular? I know that the Indians have their differences with China, but China was rather successful in building up its waste to energy portfolio. What they do is they import the critical items. Even today, after having a full developed industry, they still import the critical items. Critical items are things like combustion grade, feeding grade, the driving mechanism of that grade, and a few other items. This next to the basic design, because the basic design is actually where the true knowledge is. The second thing to do is to build large plants. So by large plants means having lines of at least 600 tons per day, up to 1,000 tons per day, to enjoy the economies of scale, because economies of scale are important in the waste to energy sector. Third thing is refrain to only reliable and reputable actors in the project development or in the EPC field, because I've seen crazy names in India and also a lot of projects that went south because the players that took up the project were actually virtually unknown to everybody. Then work with experienced design engineers. So in China, there is what they call a design institute, which offers their services for waste to energy plants and of course to other industries. But they accumulate the knowledge from one project to another project and transfer it in that way as well. And then last but not least, invest in decent O&M skills. All too often I see that people think that O&M is just down to hiring a few operators and a few maintenance crew, and that's it. But there's much more than that. There's much more required than that to make the operations and maintenance phase successful. So conclusion is, there are no shortcuts, so we have to take our time and spend the right amount of money to make the waste to energy sector successful. And if there would be more questions, I'm free to take them, or my colleague in India, which is Mr. Manish Mishra, will be happy to answer those for you.
Thank you, Nicholas. Thank you, and we are a little over time. My apologies to the participants for that. And we have time for just a couple of very short questions. We promised you that we will give you that opportunity. We have a truly spectacular panel here today, global thought leaders from